Welcome and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar from A4EP. Alliance for Empire in Partnership are putting together these webinars to really have the discussion and exchanges. Our mission is to really create an active and empowered local national civil society that shares information, exchanges, and has South-to-South cooperation, and also creates knowledge from the ground that can be shared with partners, donors, and others. This is in the series of 5 webinars. This is the third one, called Innovative and Empowering Partnership. And it's really a dialogue between NGOs and donors, looking at the future of the grand bargain, also future of some of the commitments around localization. So I wanted to welcome everybody. We have in our room with us the guest speakers, Shaheen Aman. She's the director of Manusajjanov Foundation in Bangladesh. Regina Gujan, she's the deputy head of Swiss Development Corporation. Tirtha Prasad, who is the director of Northeast Affected Area Development Society in India. Christina Bennett, who is the CEO of Start Fund UK. Samar Maroub, who is here as director of Arab Resonance for Democracy and Development in Jordan. And Rommel Taman, who is the director of Swiss Solidarity in Switzerland. We also have, and very honored to have Fatima Imam, the director of REBHI Nigeria, and she will be your moderator for today. I will be doing some of the introductions, and we are doing this in cooperation with Peter Heinz from KUNO. So Peter, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you so much, Flutie. And I will be very short because I really feel this is your webinar. But KUNO is a platform in the Netherlands for knowledge exchange on humanitarian affairs, all supported by 10 NGOs working from the Netherlands, the ministry here in the Netherlands, and many academics. They defined 2 things for my assignment, for the things I should do as KUNO, and it's localization, localization, localization. And the other one is please give a platform for voices from the South. Too much of our time here in the Netherlands, we are talking about the Global South without the Global South. So that I need to change. And I started 4 years ago, and many times my path crossed the ways of Smoothie. And so we worked many times together. And just in July, that was the last time we worked together, we organized a webinar, just facilitating the local voices to speak out about the Grand Bargain on a global level. And it was a very interesting webinar. And there was suddenly this call for a coalition of solidarity. And I think Smruti and many other people are already working very hard on this coalition within the Alliance for Empowering Partnership. And there slowly grow this idea of this series of webinars to gather all your perspectives on the Grand Bargain, on the future of humanitarian aid, and bring it together, perhaps, I hope, to the people from the Grand Bargain. The local voices should be there at the table. So that's what I hope to facilitate. What most people don't know, I think, is that this event is connected to another event here in The Hague. It's the ImpactFest, and it's the biggest online event in Europe, all about innovating a humanitarian action or development cooperation. They asked me to join their festival. I said, it's okay, only if you address the right topics. And then I talked about localization and about the power shift and bringing the local people from the South at the table at the Grand Bargain. And they said, oh, we are very pleased to do this, ask you to do this together with the Alliance for Empowering Partnership. So we are also linked to this ImpactFest. So I think it's a mutual thing. We have 2 groups together. And I think I will stop here because, as I said, this is first and foremost a place where people from the Global South should speak out. And I'm really pleased with this beautiful panel with all kinds of perspectives that can reflect on the questions that are posed also in the chat. I leave it at this, Smoothie. It's all up to you and Fatima.
Great, thank you so much. And of course, you know, bringing all this together takes collaboration. So we're very happy to collaborate with Peter and KUNO, and also Community World Services Asia, who has been helping us to do all the invitation and getting the word around and the communication around. So I would also like to thank them for their efforts as well. So without further ado, I just want to go through some technical things in terms of some rules and regulations. So if you so some of the things, so the webinar is scheduled for 90 minutes and it's being recorded and it's going to be uploaded on the YouTube. If you have any, especially particularly for the participants who are online, please use the chat function and please pose your question in Q&A. We have had some questions from the participants already who had registered, but we would love to hear more from you. And we will also be using the polling feature to ask for some few introductory questions. In fact, I would love to know now who is in the room. You've heard about the panelists, but I'd love to know who is around. So let's have the poll to see who else is on as a participant. So please fill in the poll so that we can find out who you are, from which region, and also whether you're from INGO, UN, or others, so we get some idea from you. I'll give you a
panelists. Sorry, panelists don't have to do this, right?
No, panelists don't have to do this.
Okay, great, great.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to do it. But the numbers are running up at the moment.
So numbers are going up on the participants list. So I'm really looking forward to who is in the room.
And I don't see Middle East is there, but I expect it's part of Asia. I hope so.
I hope so as well. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think most people did vote. 88% did vote. Shall I end the poll so we can
Yes.
see what we have in the room?
Yes, please. Okay. So Africa, Asia, Europe. Excellent. 53. We have national and local organizations, international organizations, donors, knowledge institutes. Great. So we have a variety of different voices, and I think this is what makes it rich. And these are the discussions we want to have, which really reflects views of different participants and the panelists. So without further ado, I would like to, okay. Is there, okay. Okay, I'm going to stop this sharing. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Fatima Imam to moderate the session and get us going on the discussions. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you very much, Simruti. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm sure we all are on different time zones. So I'm to be moderating this panel this afternoon. For me, I think it's really an opportunity for some of us who have always been panelists to this time be on the other side. Quite excited, taking this new role of being a moderator. And I would like to say that today's dialogue is a very, very important one, because this is one of the few occasions that we actually get to hear, of conversations directly between local owners. And then to say that the discussion is going to
Perhaps we should ask Fatima to put off her video, because I think maybe it's too heavy for her.
So Fatima, if you can put off your video and just put only the sound on.
I think it's hung her.
Yeah.
It's so she can't hear you.
Yeah. Okay, I will communicate with her.
Hello, am I on?
Yeah, so Fatima, maybe you should switch off your camera because maybe it's a bit too heavy, so we can hear your voice only.
Okay, yeah, I
Then,
can do that.
okay, great. Then we can hear you. So please go ahead. See, these are the challenges we face, right?
Okay, so
Great.
exactly, and I think that's the fun part. Wherever we are, we're trying to see that, our voices are heard, and we will not want to allow technology actually defeat us. So we're trying to forge ahead despite all the technicalities and the challenges. And I was just trying to say that we all know that the grand bargain is a deal between donors and the local actors, where a lot of commitments have been made by the donors. And 4 years down the lane, it has been reported that progress is really, really slow. So that raises a lot of questions and, as to how do we improve on what we have achieved so far? How do we move forward? And then what are some of the changes, that we intend to bring to the humanitarian sector? Now, talking about us as partners, the local actors and the donors. So this conversation promises to be a very, very exciting one, where we're going to explore a lot of innovative ways of trying to ensure that we change some of the bureaucracy that does exist in the humanitarian sector and some of the challenges that we face together. And already Simruti has informed us of a very diverse and also very exciting, I think, group of speakers. We have first Ms. Shaheen Anam, who is the Executive Director, Manusajjanov Foundation, MJF, in Bangladesh. The foundation actually provides funding and support to small and large organizations in Bangladesh. So I would like to start by asking you, ma'am, to please share your own experience with us all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really, really excited at the opportunity. So I did have a bit of a chat with Shruti. So maybe how much time do I have? I just want to make sure I don't overrun. Smriti?
You have between 3 to 4 minutes, ma'am.
Oh, 3 to 4 minutes. So, okay, I have to be very quick. So Manusajjanov Foundation is a national grant-making organization, and it is actually the largest national grant-making organization in Bangladesh. There is another one, but they do microcredit. We provide funding for human rights and governance work. And basically, if I just say it in one sentence, that through partnership, we build capacities of local communities to demand access to quality services and to address issues of human rights violation. But we also work on our partners work on the supply side to make the service providers, the public service providers, more responsive to the demands of the poor and marginalized people. This is what Manusajjanov Foundation basically does. And we are also very strong in policy advocacy at national level. In all our efforts, we take our partners along with us from the grassroots to the national level. And our uniqueness is we provide that linkage of bringing together the grassroots and the national level advocacy. So all our advocacy is based on the grassroots, that the information and evidence we gather from the grassroots and we take it up to the national level. So we make that vital linkages between the small and the large. Having said that, I would just like to say that in the last 50 years since Bangladesh became independent in 1971, the local NGOs have come a long way. It started with a lot of relief work in the beginning because the whole country, was shattered after the war. So it started with providing, relief to, vulnerable groups. And then we had a kind of evolution, which was mostly service delivery. It could be from donors. And then Bangladesh went through a lot of military rule, and I won't go into the history, but the donors found actually national organization to be trusted, and there was a continuity in the national organizations to carry on the mandate or kind of implement the goals and objectives that the donors wanted to give their money on. So as you know, we are huge on microcredit, so that proliferated. A lot of service delivery, the things like helping the government in the immunization, education, water and sanitation. These are some of the big success stories of Bangladesh. And also the empowerment, the economic empowerment of women through microcredit. It is a bit controversial, but nonetheless, that was the first time that women in Bangladesh, the poorest women in Bangladesh, had access to cash in their hands, and they could do what they wanted with it. So it's very, significant. After slowly the evolution came to, so as I said, service delivery, and then talking about this dialogue on human rights and governance, so that people don't only live by food and income, but they also want to get involved in the way they are governed. They also want to talk about rights of the most marginalized people, the people who have all the of being left behind, all the chances of being left behind, and to talk about entitlement, not as a charity, but as a right, the citizens' right to services, especially, and which is there in our constitution also, and for the law to work the same for everyone. So that is the evolution of the national or the local organizations in Bangladesh. And I would say that in terms of experience, in terms of skills, in terms of being able to manage different kind of situations, the local organizations have come a long way. And I feel very strongly that there is no reason to treat the local organizations as less competent, less effective, less capacitated than any international organizations in Bangladesh. Not all. This very small organizations need capacity building, and it is one of the mandate of Manusajjanov Foundation to build the capacity of small local grassroots organization and bring them up to a level where they can also leverage funding on their own. And I have hundreds of examples of very small organizations being able to leverage other funding from donors. However, as you know, the donors, in their effort to bring down their operational costs, have started looking at big projects, for example, giving a lot of money to management companies who bid for their project, and where donors feel that their money is safe, because these big companies can put in money fund upfront, and then they get reimbursed for that, which a national organization, even like Manusajjanov Foundation, there's no way we could compete with that. So some donors in Bangladesh have kept faith, like the UK aid, and we get funding also from CEDA, from Global Affairs Canada. These are the donors who we have been able to convince actually that local organizations are capable, that your money is safe with us, and we will really spend it for the purpose that you're giving it to us. So maybe later on, if you have any questions, I don't want to overrun my time. I'm going to stop here. Thank you. Fatima, is that okay?
Fatima, you have to unmute yourself.
That's very okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I can see you have quite a very unique role in the sense that you are like a local funder who is actually trusted, you know, by communities, and then the work that you have been doing over time in trying to build the capacity of local actors is quite remarkable. So next, we are going to call upon Ms. Regina Gujan, who is the Deputy Head of the Multilateral Division of Swiss Development Corporation, Switzerland. SDC, as we all are aware, is a signatory to the Grand Bargain and the co-convener of the localization work stream. I would like to ask you to give us 3 to 4 minutes of your own presentation, if you would like to include as well some of the challenges that you are facing.
Can you hear me and see me?
Certainly.
Yes, we can hear and see.
Okay, thank you very much for the floor, and thank you very much for inviting me and for organizing this important webinar. As you said, I'm working at the Multilateral Division of Swiss Humanitarian Aid of SDC, and I am together with IFRC, Switzerland is the co-convener of the Grand Bargain work stream. I accompany this personally since about a little bit more than 3 years, almost 4 years, and I also see, if I look back on this whole process on a global level, but also involvement of the different representations of from the regional area. I see really also there is progress going on. And when I started in about almost 4 years ago, and if I compare it to now, there is has been done a lot. Clearly, we are not there where we want to be, but I also think the questions which are addressed under the Grand Bargain, and when it comes to partnership, then these questions tackle so many issues which need to be addressed in the longer run. And a lot of these questions are also not new. The different constituencies, stakeholders are working on it, but this is really something which is not a quick fix. And maybe when it comes to partnership, I mean, for SDC, for our work, we are a state agency we have partnerships with local actors. We are able to fund directly local actors, which some of donors cannot because of their legal frameworks. And so for us, in all our work that we do on localization or on the question of real partnership with our colleagues in the working for the different partners. So it always comes on about, I would say, 4 or 5 key questions. It's about risk sharing, it's about capacity sharing, capacity building, 2 sides, and it's about perceiving the partners, both sides, the partners, I mean, be it the local actor or the national actor, and be it the donor ourselves, with our own strengths and weaknesses from both sides. And so for me, these let's call them these nuances of a partnership accompany at least my work which I do for STC, for the Grand Bargain, since I took over this. And yes, there are recommendations to be done on all sides, I'm sure, and to address this and so that that we can do a step further. So from the Grand Bargain perspective, we have a work plan developed together with the different members of the work stream, which also as I'm sure you know, we have A4EP represented there, we have NIR as a signatory represented there, both of them as signatories, but we also have involved really actively seeked the involvement of local actors, because we also said, as your Fatima was, or no, it was I think Peter putting it out there when you made the introduction, that the local stakeholders have to be at the table when we discuss these pertinent issues. So we put together a work stream where we work now for 19 and 20, where we are now in the implementation phase, and a lot of these issues, these subtopics, if I can call it like this, of a partnership, are on this agenda. So I stop for the moment with this. I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Regina, for your opening remarks. And it's quite really a topic that every local actor is really interested in talking about localization, and then the works you co-convene with IFRC, and all the issues that you have actually raised, issues around risk sharing, issues around capacity building and sharing, perception of local actors, as well as how they also perceive the donors, are really issues that need to be looked at with a very good understanding, and how that also enhances partnership, are some of the things that I've taken from your presentation. We would like to move on to our next presenter, who is Tirtha Prasad, who is the Executive Director of a grassroots development organization known as Northeast Affected Area Development Society Needs, based in India. Mr. Tirtha Prasad, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening from Assam, India. Thank you, Fatima. First of all, I would like to just clarify, am I audible to you all?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thank you. Okay, it's a privilege and honor for me to be part of this webinar called Innovative and Empowering Partnership in Humanitarian Aid. I'm representing Northeast Affected Area Development Society, a local organization based in the community in the state of Assam, the northeast part of India. We are mostly working in humanitarian response. Along with that, we are working in rehabilitation, reconstruction, and disaster risk reduction. Also, there are plan and programs we are implementing on climate change adaptation, then on sustainable development, as well as human rights. So as in these organizations, I have been working for the last 10 years, responding to different disasters and situations, emergency situations caused by different hazards like flood, conflict, and disasters like soil erosion and sand deposition to the agricultural field. Our region is very much exposed to different hazards like flood, earthquake. The whole region is occupied under the in the Richter scale 5. Known as the Zone 5, and the most risky region in India. And there are different factors for conflict and other ethnicity. So these are all sort of challenges we are facing. And every year we are having flood in our region. So like every year, annually, we are responding to the communities who are affected, the communities who are vulnerable to flooding and other consequences that is caused by flooding. We have been getting experience and challenges as well, and also learning throughout our response with different communities, different organizations for the last many years. Like as organizations, NEEDS is responding to the disasters since 1998, and I have been associated since 2011. Like there are INGOs we are responding. I will not take names of organizations, the nationalized INGOs, but I would like to draw attention and the key lessons learned out of those response with them. Many a times we find that the response is not timely in context of our region, and the organizations, the INGOs specifically, they are not addressing the actual need of people in need. The aid delivered to people, it is not up to the expectations of community and the affected people. The context, there are context challenges, environment and law and order situations also sometimes we face throughout this response program in the state or as organizations in community. Like organizations, they have their own centralized policy of procuring relief goods. They have their own centralized policy to implement things in the ground. We as organizations, local organizations, we are just given assignment as local to manage the local logistic. Just for example, to get permission for response, we need to go to the deputy commissioner. We need to meet the relevant government authority to get permission for response in the community. Then hiring a car, renting, finding a rent office for them. Then sometimes most of our workers are taken by INGOs, actually, which create actually abrupt situations within our organizational management. So these are some of the challenges we face being a local and a small community-based organizations while doing response with the INGOs. And most of the INGOs, not all, but maximum INGOs, actually, we find that they have, while intervention, they have their own controlling policy. We do not find sort of transparency mechanism. We do not find space in terms of participation. Equality is a very big concern, and also there is no visibility and promotional aspects for local organizations by international or nationalized INGOs. So these are some of the challenges. The COVID-19 situation I'd like to specifically refer on. The COVID-19 pandemic was global, but the risk was very local. In our state, people were affected with a lot of disasters, including COVID-19. At the same time, while total lockdown was going on as declared by the government of India, at the same time, the recurrent flooding was, it was at the same time underway in a multiple waves because of heavy rainfall or maybe rapid climatic variation in our region. So at the same time, people were affected by total lockdown, getting impacted in terms of economy, social, and other issues. And also the spreading of coronavirus was on peak. At that time, people were submerged by flood. So at that time, actually, for the first time, we were able to reach out a donor like Start Fund Network, which was really a great achievement for us. So with the help of Start Network or Start Fund Network, we could able to reach out near about 1,000 families. 1,000 families in terms of supporting food and hygiene, food and dry rations, hygiene support, and other software component like public health promotion and advocacy, and also linking with the other donors, like including the district administration. So that was like an achievement for us, and we found confidence by working directly with the donors like Start Fund Network. Like we have gained confidence that being a local organization, we can also come up. We can also take control local. The community also can drive response with us. We can also start locally led response in the communities. So like that was one of the key lessons learned we had with the Start Fund Network in the time of COVID response or COVID-19 pandemic programs. Then reaching out the unreached in time of need and as per requirement. Like the assessment was completely done by communities. Our community mobilizers, they spread up to different communities, and they were able to assess situations in the community. They could able to find out the need. So in this process, the response was completely a locally led response in our area, and we are very happy for that. And it was a complete new learning, dealing with a donor directly at the international level. The donor was the fund was supported by Save the Children UK through Start Fund Network. It was a good learning process for us as well as organization, and it is a strengthening. It is strengthening a process in terms of our capacity building and capacity enhancement. The time is very short. I would like to just as recommendations, we'd like to just cite that we need, as local organization or as organization based in the community, we need actually enabling environment so that we also grow and learn equally with the other organizations at different level. We would also need space to take part in the policy advocacy or policy influence at different levels, and organizations from all level, we need to actually understand our own limitations and capacities. So everyone have the responsibility to come up to give space to all organizations, and there should be equality and other factors for local organizations. Those who are struggling to support, those who have goodwill to support people, but they do not have all sort of resource and other technical inputs for them. So as local organizations, I feel that network like Alliance for Empowering Partnership, they need to come up for strengthening local organizations network in different regions, in different countries. That will actually enhance capacities of small and local organizations, those who are working in the front line. So as of now, I would like to stop with my short compliment. So maybe in the later part, I would like to address your questions and queries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tirtha, for your presentation. You have been able to actually clearly present the challenges that local actors and national actors actually face, and those challenges are not limited to India. I think they are almost in all other regions as well. And your points on how we need as local actors an enabling environment to grow, the space for us to actually participate, but also to understand what our limitations are and what our capacities are really well articulated. Thank you very much, Tirtha. And then we're going now to the next panelist in the person of Miss Christina Bennett, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Start Network UK. Start Network is actually the first multi-donor pooled fund managed exclusively by NGOs. So, Christina, can you please share your perspective with us? You have 3 to 4 minutes to do that. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Fatima. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Great.
Yes.
Thanks, Fatima.
You're very audible.
Yeah, okay. Good. So anyway, thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Smriti and Peter, for convening this meeting, but also inviting me to be part of it. You know, I don't know how many of you know about Start Network, but we're a membership organization that's working to solve or address some of the sector's most enduring problems. That's slow and reactive funding, centralized decision-making and power, and really an inability to change that has dogged our sector for many decades now. As a network, we're made up of 53 NGOs representing, large international NGOs, national, local NGOs, and community-based organizations. So really the diversity of what the humanitarian system has to offer. Many of you are on this panel, some of our members are on this panel, and I hope many of you are among the participants. So I'd love to hear from you too, as part of the discussion we have after the remarks. But I suppose I'm on this panel representing both a humanitarian donor. As you heard from Tirtha, we run the START Fund, which aims to get fast funding to NGOs. But also as representing kind of a membership of a complementary membership of both international and local NGOs, trying to work out all of the tensions of what that means. So during our assembly last week, we have an annual assembly of all of our members. I was challenged by both our international members and also our local members about START Network's localization ambitions. And specifically what they were asking me is, what can we expect from START Network, not only to achieve our ground bargain commitments, but to really be able to operate as a collective and achieve this vision that we all have of a humanitarian system that is innovative, that is proactive, and that importantly is locally owned. So in the 3 or 4 minutes I have with you today, I wanted to discuss my answer with you and tell you a little bit about START Network's journey, which, while not always successful, has taught us a lot about what works and what doesn't work. So what do our members want to see from START Network? 2 main things. First, they want to see actions that shift decision-making power to local frontline organizations. And we're trying to do that in a few ways. We've launched now 5 country-based hubs in DRC, India, Pakistan, Guatemala, and the Pacific region that have the autonomy to make decisions about their programs, their funding, and their advocacy. And some members of our hubs are on this call. They're beginning to operate their own programs and will soon be able to take on their own members. And what we're hoping is that in growing these hubs, we create what we call a network of networks, a sort of big global federation of civil society hubs that operate as entities in their own right, linked by a common set of standards, values, and principles. We've also been in the process of designing a governance structure for START Network that prioritizes equitable participation for all of our members in governance affairs and in the decisions that we make. So in our voting assembly, where hubs will now have a say in how the network is governed, and also in our board of trustees, where up to 35% of board seats will be allocated for local leadership. And what we've learned from all of this design work and all this programming and the launching of our hubs so far is that power sharing is not an easy job, and it requires appetite on both sides. So when taking up power, our local members need to take on their leadership roles squarely within our hubs and be clearer about what they want from international members in support of their activities. Our international NGO members need to figure out how to be in the game without leading the game and support their local counterparts to lead in their stead. So we're trying to improve this in START Network. The second ask from our members is about a removal of the barriers that prevent direct access to funding. So we run a series of funds, the START funds, START Fund COVID-19, START Fund Bangladesh, to name a few, and we are channeling funding directly to local members. For COVID-19, since April, we've channeled £500,000 in direct funding to local organizations. And you've just heard from Tirtha what NEEDS did in India with that money. We're also now working with our local members in Pakistan on a risk financing program to channel money to NGOs in advance of predictable crises such as heat waves. We're also in discussions with our hubs about how to support them with their own in-country fundraising so that our hubs have direct relationships with donors without us sitting in the middle. But I would have to say that on the whole, while we are making progress, we are not yet delivering on our full commitments to target and to channel funds to local organizations. One set of those barriers for me is about our organizational practices, and that we have, I suppose, the most control over. Most of our programs are actually not currently set up for meaningful local participation. The money that we channel through the START Fund, for example, typically goes indirectly still through one partner, which makes our fast funding model, our 72-hour turnaround model, much less effective. And during the COVID-19 response, our local partners that did receive funds directly said that our timelines were really too short for them to, with the capacity they had and the staff that they had and the procedures that they had, our timelines were too short for the quick turnaround in the decision of how to spend the funds and then the spending of those funds. Still our decision-making meetings at country level are conducted in English, irrespective of the local language. And organizations that, our member organizations don't have dedicated funds for translation. So how are we going to make that work? The other set of barriers I see, and probably a set of barriers that we have less control of, but we're working on, is what we see as the compliance culture in the sector that uses really strict due diligence policies to determine who gets funded and who is deemed too risky for funding. And so at Start Network, we've been policing something called the tiered due diligence system that offers different levels of funding depending on organizations' compliance levels, and then offers organizations support in order to strengthen their compliance as they move up the tiers. Our aim is to maintain solid standards of financial accountability and good management, but also while injecting some degree of proportionality in what we ask of our members. So for example, if a member wants to access £50,000 from the START Fund, should they be subject to the same set of due diligence requirements as a member wanting to access £500,000 from the START Fund? You know, we do not want to create more bureaucracy, more compliance where it's not needed. But what we found is even creating this tiered system and classifying organizations in such a way that we ourselves may be further stigmatizing organizations and reinforcing this perception that smaller organizations are riskier organizations, that community organizations are riskier organizations. So we're looking now at how do we realign our due diligence with organizations' practices, not just the policies that due diligence requires. We're also looking into the affordability of our due diligence, because right now, the cost of going through Start Network due diligence is far above what many local organizations would be able to afford. So we're trying to bring those costs down. So I guess what I would say is that we're aware of all of the issues, all of the blockages, all the barriers that prevent organizations from meeting ground bargain commitments, that prevent these innovative partnerships between local and international organizations. But the major lesson that I've learned 1 year into this job is that none of this will work unless we're all pulling in the same direction. Local organizations, national organizations, international organizations, boards, and teams. And I guess the final thing I would say is that as urgent as this agenda is, especially for those organizations who have been waiting for localization to materialize for some time now, it is also about taking the time to learn by doing, by trying and failing, by demonstrating, by evidencing that our system can and will be different. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Christine, for this very, very informative presentation, because, you know, as a local actor, I'm particularly interested in, you know, acknowledging the challenges through, you know, realizing that it requires team effort and working together as partners, local, national, international, coming together to look for more innovative ways of working. I think it's really commendable. Thank you so much, Christine, for your wonderful presentation. Moving on, we would like to now introduce Samar Mohareb, who is the Executive Director of Arab Renaissance for Democracy and Development, ARDD, which is based in Jordan. And that is an organization that was founded in 2008. Mr. Samar?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you. What? Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this refreshing dialogue so far. It was a pleasure listening to all the previous panelists. We learned a lot. And I think this is a very timely discussion where we need to join efforts to overcome the global challenges that we are facing together with our local NGOs or international entities. And this is why we are calling for localization. I represent an NGO based in Jordan in the Middle East. It's a region where it's facing tremendous turmoils everyone is aware of, and long-term crises one after another. But at the same time, I'm representing an innovative coalition we created in Jordan to represent 50 other local NGOs that we are trying to mobilize them to join this movement. As I consider the localization, it's a social movement, or it's a cause where we have all to participate in. For us as ARDD or JONAF, localization was a journey of learning, passed through many stages and phases. started by trying to participate in the available spaces for local NGOs, such as we are members in START network, and we were one of the first, I think, national NGOs where we joined START network, and then we became a board member even in START network, and that was a rewarding experience for us to go through this process of being heard and accepted and engaged, let's say, on an international level. Then the second phase was to create our own space as local NGOs, and I think A4EP was one of the main examples or main station in our journey, where we stopped together globally to join efforts and join our voices. And this is where we shifted from participate in available spaces to create our own space. After that, we start thinking how we can replicate this learning and this journey, replicating it with other local NGOs in our countries or in our regions. And this is where the coalition ideas came up to call for localization and to share with other local NGOs the opportunities and the challenges we are facing as national NGOs to be well heard and accepted and aspire together for equitable partnerships, as we were looking for several years, to guarantee better humanitarian assistance to be delivered in our countries. From there, I would say localization was a tremendous learning experience for local NGOs. And the needs are massive around us, and how to adapt the systems internally and externally, nationally and regionally and internationally, and share these lessons with others. And from there, we start to be more focused, or we learn to be more focused on how to measure our success and how we measure our impact that we are achieving localizations within our context and scope. And I would shed the light here on one of the examples where we felt we have to be so targeted, or to have specific, let's say, agendas within the localization, such as how to localize the gender equality programs that we have within the national civil society organizations. And we established a strategic partnership with UN Women here, where we agreed together to support other women-led organizations to have the required level of ownership to gender equality agendas, to guarantee the required trust in them and the required understanding for the priorities of women in their communities. Other example, I would say, for localized, the agenda of localization is the issue of decentralization, and how we are shifting the powers, not only from international donors or INGOs to big local NGOs, but how we empower smaller organizations on the front lines to have the required capacities to be able to respond with us when there is a need, or to engage with us in these available spaces or created spaces. And that required from us to change not only the humanitarian structure we are working within, but as well to have a dialogue with our governments and convince them with the localization agenda and why they need to empower the local CBOs, the local NGOs on the ground. And with the shrinking civic space in certain countries, such as the Middle Eastern countries, this is by itself, it's a step towards localization, how we enable the right civic space for local NGOs to participate. And this is transformation or shifting power at many levels. For sure, it was not an easy journey, and still it's a big burden of our cause towards localization. The other issue we are working on how to sustain all of these efforts. We know that there are limited resources, there are competition over priorities. We have the COVID, we have the development agendas, the humanitarian agendas. So how we can make sure that the localization is still be the focus of all of these entities that we need to engage with. And here where we need to create knowledge and join efforts, and creating knowledge, again, it's another stage towards localization. Localizing research, empower the partners to shed the light on their own evidences, how they can make these changes on their own local communities, document all of that, translated into their own languages, and then translated to the global languages where we can participate in these dialogues. So I think another part of how we sustain efforts is how we sustain the learning and we localize the research. I would end my intervention at this level that we have so many priorities towards localization, but for sure we have to seek better partnerships among all of us and move from partnerships to friendships and one team working, because we are all in together in this cause. And as you can see, our localization demand is not against the international humanitarian structure, but we have internally several barriers that we have to overcome together. And I think with our joint support, we can do that. And I would like to thank A4EP for creating this space again and mobilizing us to participate despite all the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samar. Thank you for bringing out some of the internal barriers that local actors face, and particularly looking at it from knowledge perspective, because local actors themselves need to really be educated on what is happening, especially at the global level, for them to be able to empower themselves. And that can only be done if we ensure that we do a lot of research, we document, and then we translate the findings into the languages, into local languages. Thank you very much, Samar. Moving on, we now call on the last but not the least of our panelists in the person of Ronald Thoman, who is the Director, Swiss Solidarity in Switzerland. Roland, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Does everyone hear me correctly? Very good.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having me today. And for those that don't know Swiss Solidarity, we are a foundation founded and supported by the Swiss Public Television, especially in fundraising. During major crises, we get their support, and therefore we are able to finance projects for approximately 500 million Swiss dollar. That's about the same amount in euros annually in average. So, and until recently, the implementation of aid was almost exclusively organized through the 26 accredited partner organizations that notably were Swiss organizations. But we also were part of the discussion of the Grand Bargain, and in the aftermath, we've set up a budget of 5% of each fund to invest into experimenting and gain experience with direct financing for regional or local implementing partners in implementing aids. However, we had great difficulties to get experiences. One, because our accredited partners actually try to avoid so that we can invest directly. So they were always mentioning reasons why we shouldn't do them or why the money should run through them. And but also because we as a foundation, we lacked the right local partners, in meaning that not the partners are not right, but we don't know which one are the right local partners to talk to. We don't have established relationships. And because we do not know the local and regional context enough beforehand crises, it is very difficult and in the urgency of a crisis to find the right partners. So this is not our core business, because our core business is financing aid and not implementing aid. And therefore we have not established that know-how that needs, and we don't have the resources to do so. That's why we have to rely on our Swiss partners, the accredited partners, to implement aid. Secondly, because we received exclusive support from the public television, that in a major crisis we can finance projects, is also the idea that in those major crises, all these NGOs do not kind of tear themselves each other apart in fundraising activities, as the market is pretty small in Switzerland. So we take the leading role. We try to coordinate the Swiss NGOs and collect the money for them. So it's quite a difficult task for me to cut them out in the equation, because first of all, we kind of regrouped the Swiss NGO scene in order to not be in competition in those major crisis situations. But I see Swiss Foundation in a role or in a responsibility to support our Swiss NGOs to transform into new ways of conducting humanitarian aid. So what I'm here today for is mostly to listen, to find new instruments that are actually implementable or valid for my kind of smallish structure. We are a team of 16 people, very small organization for the big amounts that we try to invest into the humanitarian aid, and also to find ideas to make aid more efficient and effective in the end. Because my primary responsibility is to the people in need, to whom the money has been donated to. And the secondary responsibility is clearly to donors who want the maximum impact of their donation. And certainly it's not, I don't have a responsibility primarily for the Swiss relief agencies, or more precisely, the funding of inefficient and ineffective aid. So this is kind of the tension that I'm in as a director of this foundation, but I'm convinced that the Swiss agencies can play a role in increasing efficiency and impact. And I'm also a firm believer that a common transformation of all stakeholders, that if we do it together, is a transformation that bears more and sweeter fruits in a coordinated if we do that in a coordinated way than if we do it in a destructive way. And for this transformation to take place, we first, and that's, I think, the most important part, and that's why I'm so thankful this webinar is happening today, is we must invite local and regional aid implementers into our decisions. And that goes with all the rights, but also the duties that go with it. So there's also some implementation implications with it. Secondly, as already mentioned before, is we must test and learn. Test on both sides. We have to find what is the proper relationship and what are the proper instruments that actually bring the best results. As we are in uncommon ground, in uncharted ground, and we have to make sure that we don't forget the perspective of those who receive the aid in the end. And thirdly, as already mentioned also, so I'm a little bit late to the party, so to say, we must be patient, because culture and mindset change needs to happen before institutions can truly change fundamentally. And this is always, it needs time. And even though myself, I have this total mindset that we should be investing in local and regional partners the most we can, the institution has to move this way too, and that will take time. And the most important thing in the end is clearly for me to ensure that the humanitarian principles are upheld and that the focus is truly on the needs of the people in distress and not on organizations or people working in organizations. That's a bit my short introduction to the topic and my constraints. So I'm happy for the discussions that we will have right afterwards.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us this afternoon. So, what a very interesting and exciting conversation from the local actor perspective as well as from the donor perspective. We've heard about challenges, achievements, and successes that has been achieved, as well as from the different panelists, what they are able or what they are doing at their organizations. We have questions that have been submitted ahead of time during registration. Some participants actually sent in questions ahead that would want to throw to our panelists to respond. So the first question is that, and that is a general question, by the way, there is this concern that a lot of commitments that are usually made at HQ level, and we're referring to usually commitments around local, not tally with practice at country level. So we're asking now, how do you ensure that policies is in line with your practice at country level? And to also know if there are mechanisms in place that ensure that such policies actually match practice at the country level. I would like to call on our panelists talking about the donors that we have. We would like to start with the Swiss Development Corporation, please.
Thank you, Fatima, for this question. If I understood, this is about how do we make sure that the policies that we discuss on international level are really put in place also in our operations. And speaking for us, for SDC, for the Swiss government, so for humanitarian aid, the point is like this. So I'm sitting in a multilateral division, and I'm taking part of these rather global discussions, and try also with the work that we do in the Grand Bargain to also connect naturally to obviously to our colleagues in the different countries. So, but for then the decisions, if how, on what kind of programs, projects are implemented in or supported, contributed to in the different geographic areas, these decisions lies with our geographic divisions, and they are responsible for our programming, and of course they do this. We've taken into account also of the discussions which are on a global level. So from my part, what we try to engage with our division is really to bring in, to feed in all these the results, the processes, the tools which come up or which are developed on a rather global level, and feed them back to our colleagues working in the geographic division, so that they are aware, they can have trainings on it, etc. So that there are workshops, that there are sensitizations campaigns, so that we have also that we also sit together with them and give and discuss potential ways how can or could this be taken into the operation. So this is how it goes. But then, having said these, they of course they do and take decision on where they're working in the kind of context they're working. So, and each and every context is different. So they have then a set of requirements, tasks, issues to undertake and to fulfill also before then really handing into the board a program or a project to be co-funded, funded, supported with technical expertise, etc. So, and of course, a part of these fulfillments, or a big part, is also besides the design and how to do it, etc. It's also then has to do with compliance, with transparency, etc., etc. So all these points they are responsible for and do and are the decision makers for us. Then, as I said, of course, not only what is discussed on a global level feeds into their work, but for me also very important is what they experience and in their work together with partners on a country level or on a context level, All these are feedbacks for us, are very important to take it up again into our discussions on a global level, on a multilateral level, and also in these processes in the grand bargain. So these are how it functions, and then how do we go and check if the commitments are implemented? I think this is one of the challenge that we all have. I mean, one hand we have in the grand bargain, we have the yearly self reporting that we do, and it's not me sitting at a table and does this alone. No, it's done really together with our colleagues from the geographic division, and we really see where did we make progress, how does it look like, and the amount of funding which went either directly or indirectly to local actors. Indirectly, I mean via pooled funds, for example, and then also rather on the qualitative aspects that we have discussions. But this reporting is done very, very seriously. However, we have to admit it is also, when it comes to quantitative questions, it's especially about the funding, how much goes directly to local actors. It's dependent on data, and from a lot of the donors have difficulties to or are not able to have the data really to say how much went directly from us to a donor. It's possible for STC. What's difficult is like from us to an intermediary, to another intermediary, to a local actor. As soon as it's gone to an intermediary, it is for us, it is very difficult then to know how much from this was then really went directly to a local actor or what went to another intermediary. And this has to do with the whole system, how the system is put out in place on collecting the data. And we can do it, but it takes really a lot of human resources because it's not automized. And I think this problem, a lot of donors have this in terms of reporting, and more better accurate data would be good for better decision making and corrective measures. But on the other hand, it's something which is not done overnight again. But these are as we are decentralized in our function, these are bureaucratic processes to introduce this, and will take a lot of time. And so these are the points which maybe I can say we do our best to support our colleagues from the geographic division to implement and to really take on the discussion, and also have internal discussion to push the limit. And then often there are, as explained with the case of the data, there are hurdles which can become overcome, but not overnight. So maybe this for the moment from my side.
Thank you very much, Regina, for your response. That also talking about the different layers of partnership, direct partnership, subcontracting, that also ties into the next question as to if there are whistleblowing mechanisms, where direct partners or subcontracting partners can raise issues or concerns, to the HQ level. And then to our national and local partners, in the other arm of the question is trying to ask if they are aware that such mechanisms actually exist, or if they are able to access such mechanisms. So this is to all the panelists, and because we're actually a bit behind time, it's just a minute to all the partners, to the panelists to actually respond. If at all a mechanism does exist, like a whistleblowing, where partners can have access to, and then to the local actors if they are aware that such mechanisms do exist and if they are able to access such mechanisms. A minute to all the panelists, please. Hello? Regina can actually start, then we can go to the local actors, a minute each.
Okay, sorry, I didn't understand fully. So from in SDC in general, each partner in a given country can direct write or contact our country offices, our representation, and contact them and raise and come up with the concern. So the procedure is actually that the offices in the country are the first contact point of the for the partners or subcontractors of the partners if there are concerns to be discussed on a certain project. Over.
Thank you, Regina. Christina, please.
Sure, thanks very much, Fatima, for that. So maybe I could discuss whistleblowing on two levels. As a network organization, as kind of the secretariat of a network, we have our own whistleblowing policy that we we annex to every contract, and we make every single one of our members and our contractors and our partners sign. So they are made aware of what our whistleblowing policy is. And that includes that the fact that we have a secure email address, we have secure policies and procedures for reporting any safeguarding issues, any issues of impropriety that our partners or our members see. But also as a membership organization, we expect the same of our members. So all of our member NGOs, whether international, local, national, as part of our due diligence process, we ask them about things like whistleblowing practices and policies. We ask that they have these in place in order to be able to access our services and our membership. And I think, there are a lot of issues around due diligence that we can be, there's some issues around due diligence that we can be more relaxed about, but things like safeguarding and corruption are zero tolerance areas for us. And so we expect not only that we as a secretariat comply with those policies, but that we expect our members to comply with those as well. And we make sure that we have that as part of all of our agreements with our members. Over.
Thank you. Shaheen?
Yes, please. Thank you. So we have our own policies. MJF has policies on safeguarding, on whistleblowing. We have our own policy on the anti-sexual harassment policy, gender policies. We have all that. And our partners are absolute. I mean, we have grievance redressal mechanisms, and we have beneficiary feedback mechanisms. So our partners are always encouraged to contact us if there is any such issue. And of course, the agreement that we sign with our partners has it's part of the agreement, all these policies, gender policy, whistleblowing policy, safeguarding policies, anti-sexual harassment policy. So it's a part of that. But then our donors also have their own policies. And what we try to do is contextualize that policy so that our partners don't find it very, very difficult to comply or, with those or to understand those. So basically, MJF really stands in between the very, very local organizations and the donors, so that we are, there to bring them,
you know, kind of to a common understanding of what the donors want and what the and what our local organizations aspirations are. These you know, these policy and we are required to inform our donors immediately if there are any issues, like, you know, there is this due diligence, and now UKAID has an enhanced due diligence after, you know, what happened on sexual abuse in some of the international organizations. So it's quite I would say these are quite organized and working. However, as I said before, that there is a need to contextualize the policies that the donors have so that there is better understanding among the local organizations. I would stop here.
Thank you very much, Samar.
I think the question would be about the mutual accountability frameworks that we are having and how we can enabling the whole environment to have I don't know how to call it, a compliance, let's say, framework or a scope, how we can adopt to all of these requirements and policies and procedures, how we can have this mutual, let's say, understanding on how to prioritize and how we can replicate these experiences on the ground where we are working in a field that having competing priorities, limited resources, and how we can think of the future as well. I'm not sure of the question. I don't want to repeat what others say, but for sure, local NGOs, they have all of these procedures. The policies are easy to be in place, but how we can follow up on the implementation and how we can really push all the stakeholders on the field to have the same level of compliance. Why we always expect the local NGOs that they have a problem in compliance and we have a problem in establishing these policies. Maybe because of the limited resources, local NGOs who needs a massive team power or human resources to be able to follow up and to implement these policies. For instance, the financial policies, if you want to put it in a place, for sure you need multi-level of signatories. Most of the local NGOs, barely they can hire one accountant or one finance manager. So how you can segregate the duties? For safeguarding policies, the same, that they need to have operations on the ground and they have a level of authority over their staff, while most of them, we are witnessing, they depend on volunteers because they cannot sustain contracts. So establishing the policies, having these safeguarding measures, it's easy, but how to make sure that we have the required capacities to implement it. In the same time, we need to create this mutual accountability systems because we feel sometimes that agencies with higher budgets, they don't have the right or the required or same level of compliance as local NGOs are requested to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Samar. Ronald?
Yes, hello. Just very shortly, I think we have to differ misconduct. So for us, clearly, we have a code of conduct where we don't accept, and there's a zero, how do you say, tolerance policy on misconduction in various ways. But we also have to differ. I don't like the term whistleblowing because it might be a feedback that is very valuable, and we have to stop stigmatizing those people that they are somewhere hidden and shouldn't be valued for the valuable feedback that they're giving. And we would like to invite people actually to do and give frequent feedback, not when the project is over, but already maybe in the design phase or in the implementing phase, anytime when it's suited. Actually, we try to design also our projects more and more, and our programs actually more and more in the sense that we want to stay agile in the terms of changing needs in the field, that we can react rather than sticking to a program and conducted the way it was designed maybe 1 year ago. So maybe just without having to repeat what has said already, to motivate people to actually give feedback and constructive feedback in order to improve and learn that it's not a blame game, but it is actually is how can we improve the aid given. Huh?
Thank you, Ronald. Tirda?
Yes, thank you. There are policies of different organizations which work in a different way. I think the response team, whether from the INGO or the funders or from the local actors, the team members need to be the team member need to be oriented on the policy as well. Otherwise, actually, it does not yield the same results and does not meet the intention of the policy which was being developed. As local organizations, we have different experiences in different contexts while responding with the donor together in a disaster context. We have faced conflicting situation in the community because of different factors and issues, mostly created by INGO team members, and as well as we have faced challenges within our organizational because of conflicting situation within among the staff from the INGO and the staff from our own organizations. So while we tried to raise those concerns and queries in a way, we were threatened. So like policies are there, but the thing is that the system, there should not be any systemic barrier to reach to find out those provisions within the policies. There should be well orientations on the policies to all, including all members at different level. Then only I think the intention of policy is by everyone, including the community-based local and client organizations. Thank you. Hope, yeah.
Thank you very much, Tirda. Wow. So this has been very, very interesting exchange, and I think we have some questions also that have been popping online. Simruti?
Yeah, so I just wanted to put a couple of questions. We don't have a huge amount of time, but there are some questions coming from the chat. So one of them is that, so Samar, there's a lot of talk about triple nexus, right? As a local actor, working in the fragile context with all the different things that are present in your context in Jordan, do you see these things happening?
How would we know? Most of these talks are limited to the international communities. Most of these agendas or transformative processes, let's say, to the humanitarian structures are done by international aid agencies. Maybe as ARDD, we know some of that because we are engaged with the INGO forum in discussions, and we are trying to educate ourselves about the process locally or regionally. But to tell you the truth, we don't see that many changes happening on the ground. So much talk, as you said, about it, and as if we are really changing the scene. But in the same time, we are feeling that there is a hidden agenda behind it because of the lack of the trust and the transparency in the process. And we hope the first impact we see from this talk about Nexus is we have more open discussion about it and why it should happen, why it's needed in such context, and what would be the role of local NGOs versus INGOs, and what are the opportunities we are seeking behind. Of course, we understand why the Nexus is important, the triple Nexus, all of these things, and I think this should have been done long time ago, where we mix both, say, mandates together. But to call it as a phase, and we have to move towards it. There is a lot to be changed on the ground. We don't see anything happening, to answer your question. And the level of engagement for local actors is not that great as well.
Thank you, Sama. That's just really hearing your experiences personally. It's really interesting. The other question that I have here for Christina, there's a lot of talk about empowering national organizations, local organizations. But how about the coordination between all the different stakeholders working on empowering local and national NGOs? Because a lot of effort is made, but it is so fragmented. So what is happening in the START network around this?
Thanks very much, Smriti. Yeah, I was thinking, I saw the question in the chat and was thinking about it a bit. I mean, for us, I think empowering local and national actors is about creating space for decision-making, creating space for governance, creating space for leadership by organizations by local organizations in humanitarian responses. But I agree, I think there are lots of networks and lots of different organizations trying to do this all at the same time. And at START Network, we've got our network, so our network of NGOs, but there are also other networks of NGOs that we need to be linking in with to have these conversations. So, this kind of a conversation with A4EP is one such linkage we need to make to coordinate our efforts in order to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction, as I said. On this style of empowerment. I think we are also making connections with networks like ICVA, the NEAR network, focusing on advocacy, focusing on policy development that we on the issues that we share concerns about, and making sure that if we're all doing different things, and our messages will all be slightly different, but that we are all operating on the basis of a shared set of principles and values. So at the moment, our links with other networks are kind of informal. But for example, our hubs in the Pacific region and also in Guatemala are hubs that all have existing networks. And so we'll have more formal relationships with those networks as time goes on. So yeah, it's great that everyone is talking about this. It's an effort to coordinate on it. I don't think we need to worry that we all say the same things, because I think diversity is what we're aiming for. But I think as long as we're all talking to one another about what we ultimately want to achieve, then we'll get there.
So Regina, there's this question, and I think very important one, right? Being the co-convener, what future of the grand bargain you envisage after 2021? Because there's a lot of talk about that, and in a way, this is our dialogue towards it as well. So what could be done differently from the last 4 years? Because although you say that there's been progress, local actors definitely feel that there's been slow progress in some places and no progress in other places. So what could be done differently?
If you allow, I would like to start with the question on the nexus, which was raised, and also give my thoughts, my personal thoughts. And I think if I look about how local actors work, or how also intermediary INGOs work, for example, the question on where the funds are coming from and how they work, it's much less a question on, is it humanitarian funding, is it development funding, is it peace building funding, what kind of funding is it? I think these questions are very much on a headquarter level, because a lot of also donors are organized in historically, some of them, they have that's one a big pot, if I want to say, if I can say it like this, for all these aspects of funding. And then others are organized even goes in the same agency, and you have different departments. That's still fair enough, no, but still different. And then some of them, even there are different ministries, the funding coming from. So I think this is also something which is very historically grown and came up like this. And what we feel at headquarter level is that some of these fundings are very short-term oriented. Some donor cannot fund longer-term projects, SEC can. I'm not speaking about us in general. And then the development has a longer term period and has different instruments and different mandate behind, etc., etc. And I think the system is realizing that with the increase of the needs of humanitarian, as the increased needs of humanitarian aid, but also the increased gap of financing, etc., and that we have more protected crises, increased with increased and more frequent and strong weather-related disasters, etc. So I think we come all slowly to the conclusion. I have the feeling that we have to work hand in hand, and there are different approaches, mechanisms, thoughts, thinking, looking through glasses, how to approach things, which has to go into each other and which has to be aligned with each other or sequenced or however the context is, and it's really depending on the context. And this, I think, this is the question which at the headquarter level is very much discussed, at least where I'm sitting in, and I'm also working strongly on the question on disaster risk reduction and this matter, where also you are in a bridging. The DRR, for example, disaster risk reduction is often a bridge. Also, you work in humanitarian aid DRR, but you also have in a development discussion DRR, the topic. So, and this brings me then to where the future of the grand bargain, I don't know. So the discussions are ongoing. There were surveys done. There is the facilitation group, which is leading this process. And of course, as from the work stream, we will also have this on our agenda in the next call to discuss what the work stream members think. But when we already discussed the implementation of today's agenda, of the localization agenda, for example, this question on the nexus is pertinent, because a lot of humanitarian aid donors, they say or they have limited possibilities, for example, to fund institutional capacity development. I'm not speaking about something how to do it, but to have quality funding, longer term funding, really for the institutions to develop the local organization. And if there is this question on the limitation of the use of this funding, so then of course the quick thought is about, and what's then the possibility of the development cooperations? Because also there is an interest that in the increased change, as in the world with increased disaster, that local actors are resilient, are prepared for, and can scale up in a due time. And so these discussions are already ongoing now in the implementation of this work plan, and still in this work plan for 21 as a 20, or not the past discussion. What's about grand bargain after June 21? It's still now, and this might be also a point where then the question can come in. Okay, how should it look like? In my opinion, there are the topics of the discussion will definitely not disappear. These are pertinent. It is how it will be discussed, I don't know. The other thing is also, I think, what we from Switzerland, what we really look forward is that it's something realistic, something which has not heavy burden structure and more bureaucracy, but something which makes real an impact for the people for the people we serve in need. So to elaborate this, I don't know where the future goes to.
we make the future together, right? So I'm very much aware that we've gone over time. It's been so interesting to hear the different perspective. Maybe just one last sentence as a kind of end statement, and then we finish, because I'm aware that a couple of our panelists also have other meetings to attend. So Shahina, shall I ask you to start first?
Yes, please. Do you have any specific question or just
No, just a last statement that you would like to make.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It was really insightful to hear some of the challenges local organizations face, and at least one donor organization, SDC. By the way, we get a tiny funding from SDC in Bangladesh. Are really thinking about it, and there is a thinking going on. So I would say that the the local NGOs also have a responsibility to make their position very clear and to be united in being in putting that position clear, and for the donor organizations really to evaluate the contributions of local organizations more seriously, because where in Bangladesh, I would say that INGOs and local organizations, we compete for the same funds, and because of their international connections, the local organizations lose out, very often. So, that should not be. That should not be. I honestly think, as I said in the beginning, that the local organizations have come a long way in Bangladesh, and they should be recognized as such. And finally, I would say that, in a very overpopulated, poverty country like Bangladesh, the fact that there is so much social harmony, the fact that people are living together in harmony, and we have been able to achieve so many of the human development indicators have improved. And a lot of that is due to the work that the local NGOs have done. So I think there should be more recognition of that.
Thank you, Shaheen. That was thank you very much.
If you don't mind, I would like to leave.
Yeah, I
thank
understand.
you so much. Really enjoyed it, and I hope we continue this dialogue.
Will do. Thank you, Shaheen. And Sama, please.
Thank you, Smriti. It was really, again, productive conversations, and we are going to build on it on different levels. My last recommendation would be that we need to put actions or enabling actions to fulfill our commitments, that they are known, they are clear, what we need to do to implement the grand bargain commitments and others. Maybe we can have more partnerships and more collaborations on how to measure the success globally and regionally and nationally. And I think A4EP or many experts around us in this group are doing so, evaluating how much we are advancing and progressing in this agenda. And recently, I would like to say we evaluated where is localization in Jordan, and this country profiling is really important, and it should be followed. Like every 2 years, we make other evaluations and revisions to see how much we are going further. The other thing I would like to say is, for sure, localization is about recognition, respecting each other's role and capabilities. It's not a competition over funding. It's just not wasting more opportunities. And we saw in COVID response, all the invested resources from all our donors and partners, it was fruitful and paid lots of achievements on the ground. And those local NGOs where you as donors and others were investing, and they were the first to respond, even more than larger NGOs sitting in the central cities. They were able to provide help where in time of lockdown, we were deprived access or deprived reach. So it's an evidence that there is nothing has been wasted in investing within local NGOs. Just we need to respect them and give them the opportunity they aspire for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sama. And I know you have to go to a meeting, so please.
Thank you.
Great. Tirtha, so for you, you know, what would be your, what would facilitate to make your response more impactful as your last statement?
Okay, thank you, Smriti ma'am. Yes, every year we face a disaster situation like flooding and other natural consequences in our region. Yes, every time, most of the time we struggle to access resources. We struggle to access support from other external actors. To make our response more effective, we need to actually move beyond the compliance. We need to learn how to move beyond compliance. We need to recognize the strength of a local organizations, like credibility, local knowledge, local situation, like context and all. So we need to recognize all these things, and definitely there need to be a well-established rapid response force in the local context within the local organizations. Then access to resources need to be there. The enabling environment must be there. There should not be any systemic barrier so that the local organizations they are blocked in accessing resources from any mechanism, any sort of mechanisms. So these things are there definitely, and in addition to that, like technical support from the experts, guidance and hand-holding supports from the thematic expertise groups, that is expected to facilitate a response program to be impactful in community. Yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tirtha. Roland, please.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, Smriti. Listening to all the people participating today, I think there's a mutual will to actually make true change happen. I think what is important is that we leave the narrative that we have kind of fueled also the past years, which make us the narrative of localization, which already takes or makes people take positions rather than focusing on solutions positions that will follow up with political discussions rather than finding common ground to work together. And I would invite people to focus on the impact of the aid and the impact of each dollar, euro, Swiss francs donated. And we can only focus there to have more efficient aid if we focus on the beneficiary, including the beneficiary in the decision, in the design, and in the definition of what real aid is, trusting the local partners in also sourcing that information, and then designing programs that actually do help. And I believe that is the responsibility of us. It's not the responsibilities to make our organizations grow, to make it bigger, larger, but to make sure that each amount of money or each small contribution given is going the furthest it can go for the people actually need. And if we start to focus on that and forget about our positions, then I believe we can identify true change and good solutions for the people in need.
Great, thank you so much, Roland. Very important. People at the center. Christina, please.
Sure, thanks very much, Smriti. I think what I'll do is repeat something I said at the end of my first set of comments, which is one phrase with two meanings. The phrase is, it's about time. It's about time that we take this agenda seriously, that we get beyond commitments and nice sayings and the platitudes of localization, and actually demonstrate through tangible actions how we can make progress. It's hard, but we have to just continue to find creative ways to do that. If nothing else, COVID-19 has demonstrated the urgency and the importance of working locally to be effective. But the other thing I would say is it's about time. It's about taking the time to work together in solidarity as a sector with different skills and different expertise to come together in support of people affected by crises. I don't think any single one of us, whether we're organizations or networks or styles of organizations, local, international, Red Cross societies, whatever, none of us can do it alone. It's about solidarity. It's about networks of solidarity. So it's about taking the time to build those networks and complementary actions and pull together in the same direction. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. Regina.
This is now very difficult. I think all of the previous speakers for the last sentence, in general, it was a very rich webinar, and I think for me it is also listening what others say, listening what others. I don't know if the term is correct. The stakeholders say, you know, not only constituencies say, not only me and myself and so, but really all of them. And it goes about what Christina said. It's about doing this together, pulling in the same, pulling strong and in the same direction, and do it together. And I think also COVID showed really that there is so much possible. That we can decide and go and take action, which before, wow, was discussed a lot, and suddenly, it was possible. And I really hope that from this promising spirit can take over, and I hope that that the crisis is really for all of us soon over, but that the spirit continues also in a constructive way, in an innovative way, and that we really work together and walk the talk.
Great, thank you. Great, that's a great finish, walking the talk, right? Because we started with that at the beginning, like, you know, that question, how do you ensure that your commitments are actually being grounded, right, in the countries where you're operating as well? Fatima, please, your last statement, and then we leave it there. Fatima, please.
Thank you, Simruti, and thank you, everyone. It has been, like, for me personally, a very exciting experience moderating this panel and then all the rich discussion that has happened. I would like to take away two things. First is the fact that we need more of this conversation. We need to have this conversation regularly between local actors and the donors so that we can actually, like we now want to end, walk the talk, because it's when we do engage at this level that we can be able to work together. And then secondly, which also links to the first point, is the fact that we need each other to actually succeed. Local, national, international donors, we all are working for a common goal, and we are all serving humanity. So I think we need to appreciate that fact, and with that at the back of our minds, we can be able to now look at partnership in a different way, issues around risk management in a different way, because in the end, without each other, we will not succeed. Thank you, Simruti, and thank you to all the panelists.
Great, thank you so much, Fatima. And I now would like to thank you all the panelists and all the participants who've been very patient and stayed with us. It was a really great and rich discussion, and this is what we wanted to create as a dialogue, to really start this deepening the conversations without all the stuckness, right? Because there are many conversations stuck in many different places. So what I wanted to also do is give you some information about what next, right? So we will be sharing a recording of this webinar. And on the 17th of November, we have a webinar on coordination and representation. Again, you know, what has been that experience of local organizations with the international and other coordination mechanisms. So we will be bringing, again, different stakeholders together for this conversation as well. And that will be on the 17th of November. There will be a report from all these discussions that are happening. to feed into the grand bargain, future of the grand bargain discussion. And that's why we have this series of 5 webinars. So I just want to thank you all, and Peter and KUNO for being a co-collaborator in this, and Community World Service Asia as well, who've been very kind to do all the prepping before this. Thank you so much for taking part, and we look forward to the next dialogue. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone. And thank you all the participants who've been patient and stayed with us. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now.